I'll be putting together a series of videos of me writing a program, going from a hypertrophy phase into a strength phase into a power phase. I'm going to be talking about how I utilize my training model to build the programs and the principles and guidelines that we'll be adhering to build said programs. So what I've done so far is I've built out the first 4 weeks. That'll be a lower upper split with an aerobic day in the middle of the week for a 5-day-a-week program for the focus of hypertrophy. This will hopefully bring everything up to a general par and start to build from a minimum effective volume upwards. The next 4 weeks is going to be a push leg pull 6-day-a-week program. So this is going to allow me to maintain minimal sustainable volume for my legs, so I'm not losing anything and I'm not occurring any additional fatigue. And it's going to allow me to up the total days that I can actually focus on the upper body, so it'll be easy to occur more sets over the 4-week period. That will take me into a 4-week full body hypertrophy phase that'll finally transition us into our strength phase. And this focus will allow me to drop the total sets of the upper body, up the weight, and bring the lower body up to a sufficient place so it is ready for the strength demands on the following phase. We're going to cover some of my training principles that'll be the guidelines for writing a hypertrophy program, and talk a little bit on the training models that I've derived this information from, or that have been a big influence on how I write these programs. So what we'll be looking at is transitioning from certain qualities of training along the spectrum to make it a smoother transition. So what we can see is if speed lives in a low load, low duration, high velocity scenario, then power would be moderate, low, moderate, strength would be high, low, low, hypertrophy would be moderate, 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 and endurance would be low, high, low. So if you can move down or up without actually skipping a training quality, then you're never actually skipping any relative percentage blocks. So I believe this make it a smoother transition with less trade-offs for the qualities you've been developing in that current block of training. As to say, we're not going from a low load to a high load or a high velocity to a low velocity, but we can transition smoothly one block at a time. The load, duration, and velocity measures are what I've derived from Dr. Pat Davidson's Rethinking the Big Patterns, or his book, A Coach's Guide to Optimizing Movement. In it, he iterates how he would track or measure certain qualities of training. So for the sake of hypertrophy, we'll be looking at moderate load, moderate duration, moderate velocity. Now I also use some of Evan Picon's training model as I see it. He generally works with CrossFit athletes and uses a Moxy monitor, a device that allows him to track muscle oxygen saturation in the working tissues. And essentially what we're looking at is a 5 reps in reserve or less would also be indicative of a low muscle oxygen saturation, which essentially would be one of the features we're looking for a hypertrophy stimulus. 30 to 85 or 90-ish% of your 1RM, as long as you take it to a low muscle oxygen saturation or 5 reps in reserve or less, is going to yield a hypertrophy stimulus. For the heavier load, it's going to also increase motor unit recruitment, more tension on the muscle, which would be another feature we're looking for the sake of hypertrophy. Now this also occurs under low load, and as we see, muscle oxygen saturation gets to a low point, it's going to increase peripheral fatigue, which would increase motor unit recruitment to yield a hypertrophy effect. So now we can maximize total number of sets and work within these ranges to try and increase the hypertrophy stimulus will be occurring over the program. Now we're going to take a look at the 4-week program for the lower upper split. Then I'll show you the numbers I have laid out for the push leg pull 4-week program, and then I'll briefly talk on the 4-week hypertrophy and strength program. So ignore the exercises for a moment. I always start the program by writing out what numbers I'm looking for. So I can get a total accumulative for the day, for each week, and then total program accumulation. And if those numbers actually line up with what my training principles tell me would yield what type of training qualities or adaptations. So if I put in the numbers to start, I'd put it in just so I have some relative progressive overload. So hip dominant and knee dominant are increasing on Monday. We'd do that for every day of the week. And then we'd also put in how many of these sets are performed at what duration and under what loads. And then I'd also get an cumulative total weight moved for every day, week, and out the total program. So I would just get these yellow boxes to populate in here, and then all of these will populate at the end, giving me my weekly totals. So as we can see with the first 4-week program is we have 42 sets total. On Monday, it'll be 10 sets, or week 1, we have 10 sets of hip dominant and 10 sets of knee dominant, and gives us about 40 sets of a moderate duration at a moderate load. We'll see that 42 total sets is going to increase to about 86 total sets over the course of the 4 weeks. So we tried to start at a minimum effective volume, and we're building. We can see the program totals that 244 of the sets were performed at a moderate duration and a moderate load, probably going to be a hypertrophy style program. We would also get a total weight moved after somebody puts in their numbers throughout the course of the program, so we can track that progressive overload and see what kind of numbers that this 4 weeks could yield for us. I've laid out the numbers for the push leg pull. We're going to cover that. I'll talk on the hypertrophy and to strength transition, and then in the next video, you're going to get to see me build out the push leg pull program. So as you can see, nothing is written yet, but I have my numbers put in, and I've tried to develop some relative progressive overload for total volume or sets occurred throughout the week or 4 weeks. It is a 6-day a week. We can check out our weekly stats. So as you can see, we are starting with 84 sets in the first week. That is leaving 86 sets from the previous week of the 4-week lower upper split. We should be at an appropriate spot for still being able to recover at this total volume. We can see that on our push leg pull, we're increasing from 84 sets to about 126 sets. For the program total, we have 416 sets over the course of the 4 weeks. We have 64 hip and knee dominant and 72 at each push, pull, horizontal, and vertical category. We can see that we have 412 sets at a moderate load, moderate duration, and once again, we'll get total weight moved once I put in the exercises. So for the exercises I'll be putting in and how I'm deriving that information is I'm just going to do my best to match the movement category with the exercises. I'll use Dr. Pat Davidson's Rethinking the Big Patterns, Principles of Progression to establish what those competent movements would be given the movement category that they would fall in. Lastly, the 4-week hypertrophy to strength phase is going to allow me to bring my lower body numbers back up. It's going to drop off the total number of sets for my upper body so I can start to increase the weight there as well and bring everything up to a relatively strong point that can manage a moderate to high amount of volume. As we go through those final 4 weeks, it is going to be dropping numbers and giving us closer and closer to the qualities that would be trained for a strength phase. Once we get there, I will make some more videos covering the topic. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope it was useful or entertaining to some extent. Let me know if you got any questions or thoughts on how you put together a hypertrophy program, or just interest in some of the tools that I've used. I'll have a link to Dr. Pat's stuff and a link to Evan's stuff down below, so check them out. They got some really great content and have been very useful in me developing my model. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Good luck, enjoy the ride, and I'll catch you at some point. Peace out, y'all.